Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining us today for our quality sessions.
Hi, Libby. That was my pleasure.
I know we've chatted a little bit in advance of this, and so I'll really jump right into the questions that I have. First one is, can you briefly describe your role in the industry and how you fit in with other organizations, being owner, consultants, general contractors, or subtrades?
Yeah, sure. Well, in 2009, I founded Lindsay Quality Solutions, Inc., and we've been providing services to owners and, from the procurement perspective, helping them put contract language together around quality and integrated management systems. Then we're also, involved with the quality oversight during design and construction, as well as we've been involved with the operation and maintenance phases for owners. We also work with concessionaires from public-private partnerships for major projects. And we do provide similar services, from quality director level. We develop quality management plans and implement those on the projects. We conduct audits and oversight of suppliers and subcontractors. We also conduct QA evaluations of certain suppliers when needed. And then, on the contractors side, we also provide support to contractors and major contractors. The majority of the work we do is in the transit sector, but we also do help with commercial projects. We're involved with water treatment and other some industrial projects as well. So we provide those services to develop their quality manuals, quality management plans, audits, and also the QA evaluation side of things. Then with with medium, medium to large, or small to medium companies, we also develop quality management systems for their the corporate level. So we've done quite a few of those over the years. So it positions. We're a small company, but because we've worked at these various levels, it positions us quite well to understand. When we're working with the private side, we understand. With our experience with the owner side, we understand their the owner perspective and their concerns. It also positions us well when we're with the private sector, so that we can convey what owners' concerns are. So I think we bring quite a balanced view to the work that we get involved with.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. So really, you're involved with everybody.
Yeah. Fortunately, we there's not a lot of service providers in this sector, so we have been lucky to get exposure to a broad range of project types and sizes.
So following that question, is there a particular size of company or project that actually, sorry, I'm going to jump back a little bit. In class, we've been talking about quality management systems, and the predominant system, of course, in quality is the ISO 9001 system, which sets the stage for quality implementation. I know we've had one or two speakers that have really focused on ISO 9001, and then a couple of sort of said we don't really use that. Can you share with us your experience with this standard and sort of its implementation, who uses it, that kind of thing?
Sure, yeah. Well, the first project I did that we had an ISO 9001 based quality system was for a concrete gravity structure that we built in the Philippines for Shell oil. And that was for an offshore, to support an offshore platform in the southern part of the Philippines in the Malampaya gas field. That was in 1999, and at the time, I believe the version of the standard that we implemented was the 1994 version. I was working with an Australian company at that time, and they were I think ahead of Canada at that point. They were already ISO, the contractors were already ISO certified. And so that was a good experience, because it was a very large project, and we were able to complete it ahead of schedule, and collect our bonus, which was very nice. So, that using that structure of ISO, I think, was a contributing factor for our good success on that project. Since then, we have we've developed a lot of quality management systems for different projects and organizations that are ISO 9001 based. We have also taken organizations on major projects through the ISO certification process, and we continue with one of our clients. We've been helping them with their certification since 2010. That's a major public-private partnership road project in the Metro Vancouver area, and so we're proud to continue to help them to be prepared for their certifications. I think that the ISO 9001 standard and now the 2015 version that has come in is really the gold standard for quality management systems. And, as it is process based, it really suits itself to the construction industry. And we're finding, that there's good benefits in implementing ISO 9001 compliant projects. A lot of the owners on major projects, when I say major projects, I'm talking around $1 billion plus in the transportation sector. One of the projects we're on is up to close to $20 billion overall, as a new transit project in Ontario. But they all now require that the quality system and that the contractors working on the projects have an ISO based, ISO 9001 based quality system, and that we comply with ISO. It's not as common to have the certification requirement, which we have had on projects. We had one in Ontario as well, another major highway project. We helped that organization with their ISO certification for 8 years, and I think it's I believe in ISO, and now that the suite of standards is out there, we have the 9001, the 14001 for environment, and the 45001 for health and safety. We also now have the way the standards are written are very well aligned, so it also suits the development of an integrated management system that encompasses those three disciplines.
It's interesting you talk about the integrated management system. I know I was talking to a quality manager from a general contractor, and they were saying they tend to not, and to be fair, the contract sizes are sort of sub 50 million, and they tend to not use ISO 9001 because it's just the amount of time it takes to build the plans and the rigor required and the professionalism required from the sub-trades to do their part of it as well. Talking a little bit more about also integrating with sustainability, with lean, with health and safety, with quality, and the model they introduced was sort of the plan, do, check, adjust model, which of course, I mean, if you look at ISO 9001, it actually has the plan, do, check, adjust built within it. So just curious if you can comment on that, maybe even for the sort of smaller contract types.
Yeah, well, that the plan, do, check, and I always call it act, but adjust is the same sort of result. We embrace that that process, and I personally in my daily life and also in all the work activities that we undertake. It's a very simple process, but it can have a great weight to improve the way that we do things on projects. And even a very simple example of in the development of a quality management system, or parts of a quality management system, sometimes organizations will take many months to develop a quality management system, or a procedure that supports their system. And I advocate that we don't need to take many months to develop these things, that it's better to take the foundation that was provided through the ISO standard, and develop your plans. And often you can use other plans that an organization has to build on those. But you can take a few days or a few months to develop these plans. But through the plan, do, check, adjust model, once you start to implement your quality management plan or a procedure, whether you've spent months developing it or days, it's not perfect. We always know that even the best intention, and even with the smartest, most experienced personnel involved, it's still not going to be perfect. So I advocate that it's better to get the plan developed quickly, implement it as soon as possible, start using it, and then make your adjustments as needed to align it with the activities and the requirements on the specific project or that the organization has. So that's kind of just a basic example of the plan, do, check, act. So it's I'm a big believer in that process, and it really does work.
So sticking on that point for a minute, if a contractor, often there's very little time to put a plan in place, as you say, get something out there and then you can always improve upon it. Are there key documents or key elements of a quality management plan that you would say, definitely get these sections done, or definitely get these documents done over and over? They're the most important one on a project.
Yeah, well, I think that without a doubt, the largest contributing factor to the success of a quality management system is the top management support. And really, when you're embarking on developing a system, it's most critical to have that support. And the best way to convey that commitment of the top management to everyone within the organization is through the quality policy and the quality objectives. So when we embark on a development of a new quality management system, we always start with the policy side, with the senior management, to ensure that the appropriate direction will be given through the plan, and from there, key components of the plan are, of course, the organization itself and the roles and responsibilities of various personnel when it comes to quality. That needs to be communicated to everyone. Then, on top of that is the organizational knowledge and how that is maintained throughout the organization's, lifespan, or a project's, lifespan, because there's, we know that people move from one organization to another, and if someone leaves, you want to make sure that they're not taking all the knowledge and leaving a gap behind. We also, with the new ISO 2015 suite of standards, there's a heavy emphasis on customer satisfaction. So we want to ensure that we're meeting the customer's expectations and requirements that are established in project agreements. From the customer satisfaction perspective, how we manage the requirements is very important. So on our inspection and testing regime, we need to ensure that those requirements are, we have a system of verifying that the work is meeting the requirements of the customer. Because at the end of the day, that's really what the satisfaction is going to be based on, is the output and the resulting work that has been achieved throughout the project. What else do we put weight on? Well, the control of nonconformances is very important, because as we know, things happen in projects that weren't planned, and to nonconformities are really a good way of affecting continual improvement for the project. And there's often a lot of resistance for personnel to raise nonconformities, which I find counterintuitive, because being the quality professional, I see the benefit of the nonconformity reporting system is the root cause analysis, and that can also feed into your risk-based thinking, and that's another new focus on the ISO suite of standards. And the 2015 version is risk management, and I'm a big fan of that. It's replaced the preventive action, which we all used to do preventive action. We continue to do preventive action, but to actually document it in reports was rarely done. But now that it's the focus on risk management, it's a much more familiar tool, especially for people that are involved with construction work. The risk tool has always, been used for decades on the health and safety side of things. So to bring it into the quality realm is not foreign, and not that foreign. So those are, I think, things that we would say are must-haves in our quality system, and they all touch on the ISO elements.
I like that you mentioned the risk piece. And do you mind talking a little bit more about how ISO deals with risk?
Yeah, well, we always create a risk register, and as when we're audited for our certification, the auditor is always interested in having a look at our risk register. And we spend a lot of time, and we ensure that the risk register review is an active task. So some organizations, they'll put the risk register in place. It's got mostly a financial focus, and it's not widely shared with personnel in the organization, because it's a sensitive information, being that it's mostly financial, and as a result, there's not much exposure for personnel to the risk management process. Now with the new ISO requirements, it forces organizations to engage more with their discipline leads, and to bring to expand the risk register from financial aspects to include quality, health, safety, and environment, and construction risk as well. So the way that we approach this is we have a risk register. We establish a risk rating for each of the risks that we identify, and that we have a preliminary or initial rating on the risk, which based on probability and impact, and then we put in place mitigative measures to address especially the high or medium risks, because we always want to have low risk work. And we also, to ensure that mitigation measure is going to be effective, we do another post mitigation risk analysis that then identifies what's the residual risk after we have applied our mitigation measure. So the target is to get everything to medium or lower with most organizations, and an example of how the quality system feeds into this is where you happen to have a nonconformity, a major nonconformity on a project. So you go back to your risk register and you say, okay, well, we had identified this risk, but the mitigative measure needs to be adjusted. So you go back to adjust your mitigative measure to address the risk because it's already been realized. Or perhaps it wasn't, if you found it was not on the register. So you can add a new risk and create a new mitigative measure. So I think that this is always an area that is looked at during our certification audits and our surveillance audits that are conducted by the ISO registrars. And I think it's very good practice to regularly review the risk registers. And I advocate at the beginning of projects, it should be a monthly review. When you get into more of a steady state, it could go to a quarterly review. When you're in an operation and maintenance phase, it could even be go back to an annual review. But big believer, big fan of risk management and the benefits that it brings to construction work.
This makes sense. The two, I mean, you're right, quality, cost, risk, these things are all connected. There's a cost of quality, right? The cost of not doing good quality. And I think probably a risk registry picks that up and brings it forward in the conversation. So then, I know we say preventative action isn't the popular word anymore, but in a way it does sort of push the preventative action because you can actually see that risk in front of you.
Yes, for sure.
I'm going to jump across a couple questions here because I think we've sort of hit a lot of these different elements. But can you share with us some of the advancements and changes in the industry over the last 10 years? Obviously, this new standard is one of them and probably one of the major ones. Are there any other things that have really shifted the quality world that you specialize in?
Yeah, well, yeah, the standards, like you said, is a big one. I would also say that project agreements issued by owners have changed significantly. I reflect back to Canada Line Construction, where I was the general manager for quality, health, safety, and environment. And on that project, which at the time, which was, I guess, back in 2005 to 2010, at the time, or 2009, I guess, at the time, the quality requirements in the 1,700-page agreement took up about half a page. Now, or subsequent to that, other agreements now dedicate a whole schedule, which is 30 to 40 pages of the 17 or 2,000 pages in these major project agreements. 30 or 40 pages of that is dedicated to quality. And now, in addition to that, one of the latest projects that we've taken on also has a very significant regime of penalties associated with not dealing with nonconformities in a proper manner, and actually even having nonconformities, major nonconformities, will attract some significant penalties. So, that owners really want to ensure that the contractors, the organizations that are taking work on, are committed to a quality management system approach, and they're making it very clear that if you don't follow or implement a robust quality management system, that you're going to be penalized for it. So I think that is a major change in the industry. I guess on a smaller, less impactful area, the use of field software like BIM 360 and Procore, other things like that, have reduced the amount of actual paperwork that has to be done in the field. So using these new electronic tools, and they're not that new, but they've become much more user friendly, and the interfaces with your desktop or laptop to upload records from field inspections has become much more user friendly. So I think that's quite a good advancement for the quality side of things.
Are there certain ones you see used more often? I know I'm familiar with use of Procore. I know I've seen sometimes Autodesk, even in owner specifications, they'll actually be clear about which one they want you to use, because I think sometimes they'll use it for maintenance after. I know I've heard FieldWire being used. Are there other ones that you've seen out there?
Well, on one major project, we used the BIM 360 field. I don't know, on this current project that we've just started, the team is looking at using Procore. I'm not familiar with all of the software packages that are out there, but Aconex is also developing different modules for many things. And I guess, the problem when you start to use different proprietary softwares is the interfaces between them. So I would, I'd recommend that, if an organization is selecting some software, that you look at the options and not just focus on what's best for the field, is what's best overall for data management on the project, and what packages offer the most holistic solutions to document control and collection of field data, because there's also environmental and health and safety aspects that also utilize similar softwares. So you can end up with a lot of different software that doesn't always speak very nicely to each other, which then brings you back to doing more manual work, which is what you tried to get away from in the beginning by implementing a software solution. So it's a tricky one to nail down, but the more broadly one package can perform, probably the easier it's going to make collection and processing of data.
I appreciate you saying that. Really plan ahead and get that system figured out. But I mean, I think the system, as we always say, the system is only as good as what you put into it, right? Really having that plan ahead, that quality system, understanding who's responsible for what the processes are, what those flows of documents are, what the process flows for, deficiencies are, because you're really feeding that into the system. The system is just a robot, right?
Yes, that's very true. And we have an old saying: it was garbage in, garbage out. And when we transition from the hard copy world into the soft data collection, we did find that that people weren't used to conducting reviews of checklists or different reports that were collected on the software. And if it's not in your face, often it gets forgotten about. So what we did find, on early implementations, was that when we had the hard copy system, the person that completed the checklist would sign the bottom, put their name. Then there would be a quality assurance representative that would check, ensure that everything was okay, and if it wasn't, to deal with the issues, and then sign it and put their name. When we went to the electronic version, it was out of sight, out of mind. So once the checklist was done by the person that initiated it, it was often forgotten to do the quality assurance review of the document. So it's a discipline thing, and how the software can, I guess, force us into a workflow that will ensure that the records are reviewed, because the last thing you want is completed work and you're assembling your record packages and you find that you have records that weren't reviewed and there was problems, and now you've got to go back and try to resolve what those problems were, and often the personnel that were involved at that time are no longer with your organization, so it can create some very difficult issues. So management of that data and how reviews are conducted is a really key aspect of being successful with the implementation of those systems.
And that brings you back to one of the first things you said, right, in the key documents after you had the owner's requirements, the definition, the company policy was org chart, roles, responsibilities, but then it was, where is that data going, right? Where are those documents going? Where does that get stored? As I know you're on a project right now that's got a 9-year lifespan. Very few people will be on that project for 9 years, right? It's that kind of continuity. The class, I've given them sort of a micro assignment to create a few key pieces of a quality control plan for their projects. And I'm just curious from your perspective, some of the elements I've given them are create a deficiency flowchart, create an NCR flowchart, create some of these forms, create a multi-scope quality checklist. So like a pre-pour checklist or a pre-board inspection checklist, something that you kind of got to look, doing the QA as a contractor, something that you're looking to sort of make sure that everything's been completed before you. And then the final one that they've been given is to sort of step out of that and take a high risk scope and do a checklist. So sort of a quality assurance checklist to check that the trade's done their work. Just curious, from your perspective, are there places online or in the industry that you recommend people go to kind of get this information? Often I find on small projects, certainly the one that the class is working on, there is not a spec book. So there's information in the drawings. I'm just curious if there's a source you think that people should look at.
Yeah, I guess, we'd start with the drawings, and often the general notes on in a drawing set will provide some specifications and acceptance criteria around different aspects. There are various levels of specifications that are available. If you go to the BC Building Code or the master municipal specifications. In BC, we have the DBSS, the design build specifications. And then I guess, going downstream, you have the CSA standards and other relevant standards. On major projects, and there's one major one we're involved with in BC at the moment, where it's a design build. And the basis is the design build spec from the BC DBSS, and so the designers are taking the requirements for the project, and in most cases they're developing what they call a special provision, which is really a supplemental specification to the design build spec. And that in that special provision, they outline the requirements and tolerances, and that we would generally start development of inspection and test plans that would identify these key areas. And from the inspection and test plan, which I call the roadmap to collecting all of the reports, quality reports and requirements to be able to verify that the work complies with all requirements. From there, developing the checklists can be done by looking at the details of the reference specifications, whether it's a CSA standard. Then you can look at the specific area, which would indicate what acceptance criteria is. a pre-pour checklist, really this is when we would look together to work together with our construction colleagues, and it's some that have experience in development of a checklist, to help determine at which stage would you check certain things. So that's very valuable, and I must say that once inspection and test plans and checklists are developed, it's always good to get together with the engineer that's going to be signing off on the construction certificates, to ensure that once we have outlined what records and tests are going to be completed, that they confirm, yes, if you do all of these and we have, I will then be able to sign a construction certificate. You certainly don't want to be in a position where you get to the end of a project and the engineer comes to do their final checks and issue a construction certificate, and they say, well, did you do X? And you say, no, we didn't know we needed to do that. And they say, well, sorry, but I can't sign the certificate unless you have that data for me. So I don't know if that helps, but that's something to keep in mind.
It did. You really tied together that concept you're talking about earlier, where it's the owner requirements, and then it's that roadmap, right, that connects. How do you create the tests and inspections that satisfy those owner requirements? And it's actually a really nice lens. Inspection testing plan can seem really onerous, and sometimes people think that there's too many of them, but I think you're right. If you can really focus on what are the most important things and then do that double check with the engineer, make sure that if you actually collect this data, will it do what you need it to do? And if there's stuff on there that you don't need to be doing, maybe it's not an important part to be tested, right? Maybe we can really focus in on specific pieces and use this. This was really just a system. I like that.
Yeah, in my opinion, the inspection test plans are the most important quality documents on construction projects.
So there was the answer to the previous question, right?
Well,
we
yeah,
got it
eventually. Yeah.
and your experience on the inspection test plan, have you seen them typically be connected with a schedule? So it's sort of the plan plus the actual dates, or do you see these as separate documents,
Well, you mean the progress schedule, the schedule for work?
I guess if you have sort of an ITP, you have your mock-ups and sort of your early meetings, but you might then have your actual tests, right? Like we've got to do water test on the window assembly. Would you typically suggest loading a date or an approximate date into that plan, or just leaving it standalone as a document of sort of quality scope, not including schedule?
Well, that's a really good point, and we're just going through this at the moment with this new project I mentioned in Ontario, and there's actually a project agreement requirement that says 6 weeks prior to activities commencing, we're required to submit the inspection and test plans to the owner for review, so we have actually worked with our scheduling team, and we've put markers in on the project schedule that will remind our team that inspection test plan is required for this aspect of the work. I think it's very important that the inspection test plans are developed early and implemented or ready for implementation when the work starts. You certainly don't want to be behind, with the issuance of an inspection test plan after the work starts, because then that opens the risk up for missing certain inspections or tests that may get covered up and then you end up with an issue with the engineer not being able to endorse a certificate, or a non-conformance that becomes very difficult and costly to close out, because you have to do some large assessments or investigations to prove that the work was actually okay.
I appreciate that, Kevin. And I think we're sort of hitting our time, so I'm going to close it out on that. So thank you very much for
Okay,
sharing this insight with us.
pleasure. Nice chatting with you.